Good morning. Happy St. Patty's Day. My name is Maureen Connor Gormley, so a little bit Irish. I am a worship associate here at this church, the Unitarian Universalist Area Church at First Parish in Sherburne. Welcome. Welcome to this loving community. Come in bringing all of who you are. We gather and worship, our hearts alive with hope that here we will truly be seen. Turn down the volume on your fears now and loosen the armor around your heart. May we root ourselves in the values of this faith, acceptance and encouragement, compassion and transcendence, justice and transformation. We strive not for perfection, but for authenticity and connection. We come here to learn about being in relationship together, to listen, to forgive, to be vulnerable, to create trust and have compassion for one another. We are gathered here to walk each other home. Be here in this moment. Let go and breathe.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Reverend Nathan. I am one of our ministers. My pronouns are he and him. I have just a few announcements before that. We're going to wave to all those folks who are watching from afar. Good morning, St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day for all those who are watching, maybe even from the parade later, who knows. Just a few logistical things, as usual. If you'd like to offer a prayer for me to read during our service, the cards are just over there, and you put it in the little basket, and I will take those. You can always sign up for bells and to light our chalice and to bring our beautiful flowers, which this morning have a particular theme. Thank you, Leprechaun of the community. If you're new, there is a blue card in the pews. If somebody want to hold one of those up so you can see it. And if you'd like us to give you the most amazing emails from the church community, you sign your name and we'll know who you are and how to do that. And then the last logistical thing is if you have young ones, you're wondering, young people, little kids, and how do we do worship here with them? Kids are welcome to stay in the sanctuary. There is a family area all the way in the back corner that's lovely, got cushions and toys and books. You can also listen in the library. We finally got the speaker working in there. And also our nursery is open and ready to care for kids younger than pre-K. And elementary school kids are invited, if they'd like to go to faith formation classes after I do our Wonderbucks time in a little bit. And the last invite is that today I'm offering the Roots class, which is an introduction to Unitarian Universalism and history and theology. It's actually history that's fun. So it's going to happen from noon until you stop me from talking, and it's going to be in the chaining room all the way in the corner. And there's also a Zoom link if you have to go home, so you can watch it that way too. And we have one last announcement about our upcoming auction and our pledge campaign. Jim.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Buckley, he, him, and I'm making two announcements this morning. The first, join us for an evening of fellowship, fundraising, and fun with our Bids, Bites, and Brews event. Bids, live auction, fixed price event signups, and raffles galore. Bites, mouth-watering delights, savory hors d'oeuvres, and sweet treats. Brews, a cash bar, and plenty of non-alcoholic options, including coffee and tea. When? Saturday, April 6th from 7 to 10. Where? Right here at the Unity Hall. Ticket price, a bargain at $25 through March 31st, and then $30 thereafter. So what to do next? First, definitely buy tickets. You will not want to miss the biggest social event of the year, where you can return home with lots of prizes. Second, if you want to pitch in and make the event even better, then donate a raffle prize, such as a gift certificate or gift basket. You can donate events, such as hosting a dinner party or game night, teaching a craft or a class, or leading a guided tour or nature walk. Whether it's a hobby or a skill that you use at work, please share it with the rest of us. This event is all about having fun, coming together, and connecting with one another while doing something good for our church. There are flyers at the door as you exit the sanctuary to go downstairs to coffee hour, and there will be people at a table with laptops who can answer questions and even sell you tickets to the event. For those online at home, there is a QR code here on the screen. There's a link in the weekly email newsletter, or you can email us at auction@uuac.org. And speaking of doing something good for the church, that was my segue into my second, much shorter announcement. If you've noticed the beautiful paper tree blossoming on our wall, you've seen the leaves beginning to sprout. Each leaf represents a pledge made by someone in our community to our annual pledge drive. I want to thank everyone who has already pledged for your continued support and for helping keep our spiritual home strong and thriving. You are not just contributing financially, you're reaffirming your dedication to the church's values and mission. Without your pledge, we would not be able to maintain the church building, pay our staff, or provide services and programs that are so important to our congregation. For those who would like to pledge or learn more about pledging, folks from the Stewardship Committee will be available to answer questions at coffee hour downstairs, which will offer some extra special treats after service. For those online at home, you can visit the website. Under Community tab, you'll find a stewardship page, which has helpful resources to answer your questions. We're quickly reaching the end of our pledge drive, which is April 7th, 3 weeks from today. So please do not wait to pledge if you're intending to do so. Now let us take a moment and greet one another.
Thank you, Sarah and Brian. Good morning, I'm Jess Jonas, she, her. Please join me in our opening words this morning, a prayer given by Reverend Carl Seberg on the 300th anniversary of our congregation here in this church. The March winds of other springs have blown upon this congregation for more than 300 years, and they were made stronger for their weathering. The beauty of autumns past have been lavished on this church, and it prompted in them blessings and grace. May we walk today in the same spirit of quest and vision as did they. May we today have the same perception of the needs of those who will follow us. May we today, under the season of this New England, be worthy heirs of these years gone. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 1000. Morning has come. It's in your green teal hymnal.
And let us remain standing as Abby Bro comes forward to light our chalice, and we say together our affirmation. Both are expressions of our life and our faith here in this community. And let us say together, love is the spirit of this church. And service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. Thank you. Please be seated. I'd love to invite our young ones forward, young at heart, old at heart too, that's good.
And as our young ones are coming forward, I just want to remind you we are going to have our first rehearsal of the children's choir today immediately following the service. As long as you have a love to sing, please come and join. Me and Amy Amy and I will be doing this right over here at the piano, and we'll do it quick. It's going to be maybe 10 minutes of rehearsal, and you can probably still have time to get down to the coffee hour right after that. So please come and join us. It's going to be fun. We're going to do our first performance for this rehearsals. The group of rehearsals for this song. The performance will be on Easter Sunday morning.
Easter, which is 2 weeks away for us. All right, thank you, Tim.
Hope to see you there.
Hi, everybody. I got this weird microphone. Who knows who Madonna is? A lot of your adults in your life do. You do, okay. So she had like this thing where she did like this vogue with this microphone that I do not like. It's really awkward. But I need both hands today. How are you guys? Yeah, I like your mustache. I don't know what's you asked me what? No, this is the same wonder box Reverend Heather gave us last year before she left. The other one was black. Good memory. But you're getting ahead of my system, okay? So, I have a question. Where do you go if you want to get a good view of things? Where do you go? Somewhere high. Give me an example of somewhere high, or give me some other examples of where you go to if you want to get a view of things. I'll do a second. The top of your swing set, awesome. The what? The Eiffel Tower? Yep, that's definitely true. Someone's had a nice vacation. Yep, where do you go? A lighthouse. Where do you go? The Empire State Building, yep. Observatory. Where else? A hill. Where else? A Statue of Liberty. Rosie?
Well, there's this big ugly building next to the Eiffel Tower.
Is there?
Yes, there is.
Okay. I will go on a quick tangent. I've been in the Eiffel Tower, and I discovered that I was frightened of heights. It was a bad place to make that discovery. Because if you go up there, I kiss the ground. My wife has a picture of me kissing the ground when I get back. Okay. So, when you're up high, what do you get? Why do you need to see far? What kind of things does that give us? What does it give us the chance to do? You get to see more things and things are cooler. Yes, and then one more. You get to see things all in once. You get a sense of the horizon. Yes. Wow. So, usually when you're up higher, things might look smaller to you. You get a sense of the perspective when they're up close. One more. You can see little people look like ants when they're far away. Okay. So I've been thinking, because Doug Brown, who's over there, Doug, you want to stand up and say hi? Doug is our resident expert Sherburne and UUAC historian. He calls himself an amateur, but we're not going to let him get away with that, are we? So Doug and I are doing this very long sermon in a little bit about history, and it's about the history of this church. And we just did the opening words. They were for the 300th anniversary of this congregation. This congregation has been here in some way, shape, or form, you guys, since 1685. And he's not here, but his headstone, the first minister's all the way in the back against the wall. So when you leave or something, you could go take a look. When I first came to interview here, I was like, oh my God, this is what you guys do to your ministers. But I was trying to think, how can I help us, give me a sec, how can I help us get a sense of the history of this place? And what helps us get up above the pews to get a sense of history in this church? Any ideas? How would we get higher? Maybe what? You could go up in the pulpit. Where else could we go? Bell tower. One more idea? Choir loft. Look, up there. Guess what? We're not going to do any of those. None of those. So, I want everybody to... Hi. She walked in front just for the dangerous part of my wonder box. I want everybody to just hold on to their seats for a second, okay? just stay steady. I'm going to open the wonder box today because I got to try something. Okay. So I've been practicing because I was trying to figure out how I was going to get a sense of perspective of the church, right? And then I was at bingo last Saturday night, and I won a drone. And then Doug Brown said, Nathan, I have a great idea. You should fly it out of the wonder box. So I've been practicing. Some parents up front are like a little bit. So I want to make sure that you haven't lost my metaphor. Are we all good with the metaphor? Yes? Yes? You will remember more than just minister flying a drone out of the wonder box? Yes? No. All right. Kathleen went all the way by the door. It's so important, you guys, to stand, to get outside of our life and to get above things, to get a sense of the history that we can't see all the time. So maybe later on, if I have time, not this Sunday, we could practice this. Tim, this might rival the children's choir opportunity. But I want to thank you all for your bravery in sitting so close to my experiment. We're going to sing our young people out to their morning classes. You're welcome. Friends, let us take a breath and find ourselves within ourselves. And be still here in this time of meditation and prayer, this space in our week that we get precious too little of. Our prayer hymn for this month of March is "What We Need Is Here." The words are on our screens for us. Here in our time together, our community of care, every week, we give our attention to one another. We help each other feel and be seen. And we do this, one of the ways we do this is with our prayers, week in and week out. Prayer is a word that simply can mean attention. This morning, these are our prayers for loved ones, for Jenny Weaver-Willett, who grew up in this church, and she's going to move to Hopkinton in just a few weeks from her home in Atlanta. Her young baby was dedicated here last winter. Jenny broke her leg skiing a couple weeks ago, and her mom, Sue, and her dad, John, wish to send her all the love and light and ask us to do the same as she continues her difficult recovery. For Susan Woodrow, our neighbor in Holliston, who's going through another surgery. And this from Lois, healing energy for Ephron following his surgery. For all of these names and for those I invite us to offer into our space, we light a candle. And as we look out our windows, the clouds have parted. They've allowed sun to come through. Our prayers for the world as we mark this week, everybody, was the 4th anniversary of COVID. Today would have been the first Sunday that we began worship on Zoom for what ended up being 14 months, 15 months. Here we light a candle for all of those who were impacted by this pandemic, which is every single one of us and all of the lives lost. And last but not least, our gratitudes that so often go unspoken. We have several. This from Jen Brown for congratulations to Doug, for her husband, for his retirement from UMass Memorial after 20 years of dedicated service. Congratulations, Doug. This from Gage, who reminds us and tells us that this coming Thursday is our own Sarah's DeVos birthday. Which I don't know if she's happy or unhappy that we've just named that. And for the beautiful flowers given this morning by the anonymous fairies and leprechauns in our community. We light a candle. Jess, if you're able to. I know the candles are hard today. It's not you, it's the candles. I know. Friends, let us pray together. Dear God of sometimes resistant light, the light that doesn't show up in our lives when we most need it sometimes and most want it and most rely on it, we welcome into our lives this opportunity to be here now, to give one another the attention of care, to give ourselves the chance to go to a high place, on a hill, on an Eiffel Tower, up here in the pulpit even, the chance to read, engage, and listen to stories that help us get a view of things, to help give us a sense of the forest for the trees. Sometimes we are so stuck inside our own lives. We are too close to the ground sometimes. Our prayer is to help us rise above, to see the flame, get perspective. Let us be held here in stillness. Every Sunday we collect our offering and we give 100% of it away to support an organization that lives our values of love and service and justice and peace. And we're able to give 100% of our offering away. Thank you to your pledges to this church, which allows us to keep going. This morning, we are going to share our offering with the Loveland Foundation, and our own Ava Floyd is going to share a reading about that and why this organization. And then after she's done, we're invited to share our contributions as we can using the QR codes, and then also as the plates come forward.
Hi. So, good morning. I never speak, so, oh, thank you. Thanks. And I'm vertically challenged. So basically I'll start off with clinical psychology, doctor of clinical psychology, and I work at a practice in downtown Natick, and a lot of my work centers around working with clients who are women and men of color in high demand careers, and they talk about gendered racism where they're still continuing to experience sexism and racism despite being top level at their firms. And so we talk a lot about that and how there's frustration with, I've done everything possible, and yet here I am continuing to experience racism in my field. And so with the Loveland Foundation, part of it is making therapy accessible because it can be very expensive. And so where I am at Aurora Counseling is we donate to Loveland Foundation, and so young black women who need therapy but cannot afford it, or we don't take their insurance, it is paid for in full by Loveland, and they reimburse us. So we basically do pro bono for them. And so that's what Loveland Foundation is. And regarding that reading, one of the focuses on therapy that I do is being a strong black woman and how that is actually quite detrimental to a lot of my clients. And so I found a reading that sums it up, and it's by Lila DeVille called Don't Call Me Strong Black Woman. Do not call me strong black woman, for it is not a compliment. It is a title given to us, boxed inside expectations that weigh us down. We are not superheroes, yet we are branded with an S on our chest, forced to steer clear of the kryptonite called failure. Black women aren't supposed to fall. We're expected to stand tall, and during the whole time of this masquerade ball, we wear a mask colored with yes we cans and I got this, all the while we are withering away in our own silence. We have no chance to prioritize the cruel balancing act, song and dance, and one-trick pony show we must perform. We are tired and filled to capacity with fluids of frustration, but you'll never know it because showing any inkling of weakness will paint a negative picture for us, and how dare we make ourselves look bad. They label us strong, yet they want us to be submissive, and if we're not, they deem us unmarriageable. To them, we're unrelatable. Lord forbid we set up boundaries when we are considered undateable. So on behalf of all black women, I'm here to say it is not okay to be strong. However, it's okay to fall apart, pick up the pieces, and rebuild ourselves anew. So the next time they call you strong black woman, let them know strong black woman is not a compliment. It's the hardest job that we have, and it is a job that is slowly killing us all.
Now for a light Irish ditty.
Reitet so spät durch Nacht, durch Wind. Es hieß der Vater mit den Knaben wohl in dem Hahn, et hast und sicher, et hält ihn wahr. Mein Sohn, was blickst du so an dein Gesicht? Siehst Vater du den Erlkönig nicht? Den Erlenkönig mit Kron und Reif. Mein Sohn, es hieß ein Nebel sein. Du liebes Kind, komm, geh mit mir, gar schöne Spiele spiel ich mit dir. Und bunte Blumen sind an dem Strand, meine Mutter hat mein Gülden gewandt. Mein Vater, und horest du nicht, was Erlenkönig mit leise verspricht? Sei ruhig, bleibe ruhig, mein Kind, in dürren Blättern sauset der Wind. Bist meine Knabe, du mit mir hin, meine Tüchner sollen dich warten schön, meine Tochter ruhen die Nacht in der Rhein, in Wiegen und tanzen und singen ein, in Wiegen und tanzen und singen sein. Mein Vater, und siehst du nicht dort, Erlkönig tüchtig im Gasten Ort? Mein Sohn, ich seh es genau, es scheidet auf den Heidens genau. Ich liebe dich, mich reizt deine schöne Gestalt, und bist du nicht willig, so brauch ich Gewalt. Mein Vater, just hast begann, der König hat mir ein Leid getan. Der Vater Rausches, reitet geschwind, hält in Armen das wechselnde Kind. Reicht den Hof mit Mühe und Not. In seinen Armen das Kind versot.
As I remind us every week, we are privileged to be together here in this space. Here is our world. Beautiful things like music and sometimes hard things happen too. Let us keep our hearts tender and our eyes soft and our words true. This is what you and I strive to be about. We know there is no answer but to love each other. We bear witness against destruction. And then we gather here in this community to practice being the person we say we want to be. We cannot do everything, but we can do something, and that something is not nothing. So as Leonard Cohen reminds us, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. Let us say together, that is how the light gets in. So here's something that's going to make all of us feel a little bit younger. This year marks the 350th anniversary of the town of Sherburne, which means that right here on this hill, we are sitting in the first parish in Sherburne, founded in 1685, has existed continuously for 339 years. It's a lot of years. Doesn't we feel younger? So, as I mentioned, today is a part of acknowledging and noting and wrestling with the complicated history, and it is indeed complicated history that is us. I've asked Doug Brown, who has, as I mentioned, become something of a Sherburne history aficionado, I would call him, especially as it relates to this congregation's connection to the Natick Praying Indians, to join me in telling stories that so often don't get told, shared, or remembered. Now, if you're thinking if history isn't your thing, it's kind of like yawn-inducing. You might be wondering, why does this matter? And for that, I'm going to lean on the oft-repeated quote by George Santayana, a Spanish-American philosopher who in 1905 wrote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Now, condemned feels maybe like a strong word, especially in a Unitarian Universalist church. But I like to think that it means that if we don't learn from other people's mistakes, we are likely to make some of those same mistakes ourselves. On the upside, it also means that we learn about people's contributions. We might want to repeat some of those, right? So the way this is going to work is that Doug and I are going to share some questions. We have questions for each other. Disclaimer that we can only touch upon the surface of things, otherwise we would be here until tonight. Fun fact, by the way, in the 1700s, the services here were approximately 3 hours long. Morning. Then you come back at night, do it again. There was no heat. There was no singing, Brian. So we're getting off kind of easy. So Doug, first question. What are you learning as you learn more about the history of Sherburne as it relates to this congregation?
Thank you, Nathan. So since we're talking historical record, I do have to set the record straight in saying that the drone was not my idea. In fact, I wanted to contact our liability insurance carrier, but he pulled it off once again, somehow. I am learning that when our church was first founded in 1685, the Massachusetts Bay Colony was still reeling from the devastation of King Philip's War. That war between the English and the Native Americans was the bloodiest and most savage in American history. The Praying Indians were its greatest victims. They were Native Americans who converted to Christianity under the care and attention of John Eliot and Daniel Gookin, the father of our first minister. The Praying Indians were caught in the middle of this conflict and mistrusted and horribly treated by both sides. After the war, many moved back to their original village in South Natick from Deer Island in Boston Harbor, where they were confined and forced to dig for clams for food in the sand. They were treated as outcasts. Many were sent into slavery or killed. English people in villages around the colony attacked them both verbally and physically. It must have been so lonely and scary for them. But our community and our first minister stepped up to help. They walked to South Natick once a month to join these Praying Indians in fellowship, in prayer, and to make them feel comfortable and welcome. John Eliot documented this practice in a letter of April 22nd, 1684, confirming that it started even before Daniel Gookin was formally ordained as our minister. And we know again on September 1st, 1686, the famous Judge Samuel Sewall wrote in his diary that he joined in one of these Natick lectures, noting that our first minister preached to about 40 to 50 men, women, and children at the Indian meeting house. I love learning that our congregation at the time of its founding was resisting the dominant culture and choosing to stand with and support our native friends who had been so oppressed. And Nathan, how about you? What are you learning as you learn more about the history of Sherborne as it relates to this congregation?
And so, by the way, what Doug is talking about, South Natick, it's right by the library of the Elliott Church, right when you drive on 16, so you can see where the area is. So my answer is about our history. It was not always thus. This congregation became Unitarian in 1842, okay? It became Unitarian Universalist only in the middle 1960s when the two denominations merged. So even though we like to think that our congregation has been a beacon for progressive religious values for hundreds and hundreds of years, I keep discovering how actually, in our history, just how fire and brimstone-y we were. But we were a reflection of our time. So check this out. Our religious forebears were separatists or Puritans in England who were persecuted in England for trying to set up their own congregational churches. That's where you get the word congregational church, okay? Where they could establish their own congregations and their own kind of governance according to the theology of John Calvin. Who's heard of John Calvin? Wow, awesome. Who's heard of Jesus? Yeah, see, like less hands. That's interesting. Okay. John Calvin urged to return to the Bible as a source of all knowledge and argued that some were saved and some were not. Okay? You with me? The Puritans set up a quote-unquote holy commonwealth. It's where we get the Commonwealth of Massachusetts from, following the ideas of Calvin. Each political unity was called a parish or a church. Next thing, our stewardship folks are going to love this. All inhabitants of said town of Sherborne were assessed to support the church. That's why it was called a pew tax. And the numbers would correspond. Jess, you'd be like, all right, who's sitting in number, whatever number that is? All right, 2. Jess, where's the tax? That's not like a lovely tree vibe. Oh, no, it's a different thing. Only the regenerate, not degenerate, regenerate, those who admitted their sins and had received the grace of God were allowed to vote in the congregation. Here's a part that maybe would freak all of us out. The confession of sin was made in front of the church in great detail. Who's got public speaking like phobia? Take it to the next level. And women, you're going to hear Doug and I talk about women in a little bit, were only allowed to write out their confessions and have them read by the minister. And even then, even though they could be born again in Christ and saved, they didn't vote. They had no vote. So if all of this sounds like a Handmaid's Tale episode that we watched during the pandemic and it scared all of us to death because it was mirroring reality, yes. Doug, next question. What has surprised you as you've learned more about our history?
Here's my biggest surprise. It relates to a man named John Hull, who was the father-in-law of Judge Samuel Sewell that I mentioned earlier. Hull was the first mint master in Massachusetts and developed the first silver coin in America called the Pine Tree Shilling. It was made in the year 1652, the same year that Sherborne was settled, and that date remained on the coin for the next 30 years of its existence. The Pine Tree Shilling was the model used in 1965 when Sherborne's town seal was redesigned, and it remains today the symbol of our town. Hull owns significant property in Sherborne, including much of downtown and very likely the land upon which our church now sits. In short, he is highly celebrated by our town and the area. Well, here is the surprise. in 2022, Harvard did a report on its legacy of slavery. And in that report, I learned that John Hull, as treasurer of the colony, had managed the sale into slavery of dozens of Native American men, women, and children who had been taken into captivity during King Philip's War. I have no doubt that many of them were praying Indians. And Nathan, how about you? What has surprised you as you have learned more about our history?
A little like you, Doug. I have been learning just how little I know. Last week, if you were here, you heard me talk about the hymn, Yonder Come Day, and how that hymn, actually, it's not just, I heard it growing up. It's just like, oh, it's great, it's another day, yonder, awesome. And actually is from, instead, a song that was sung during the Watch Night catalog when enslaved and free black Americans stayed up all night watching and waiting for the Emancipation Proclamation to take effect in the morning of January 1st, 1862. So in that context, context matters so much, doesn't it? And what I'm being surprised about in our history is how much of that feels true as I learn more from Doug and others. I have met with the Native Prairie Indians, and how much of our history, as Doug said, has been told by the victors and the winners and those keeping the records and others and the ministers, by the way, on the back wall. Like you can see them all listed there, and Daniel Gookin. All of those stories have been told by the leaders. Meanwhile, all the people who made this place possible through the years so often don't get their stories described. Those who have been moved aside or moved along in order to make things the way that we have them, those stories don't get described. I mean, my surprise is how little I know and how humbling it is, and how my sight, to kind of get back to my drone, my sight is very limited. Often it's been myopic. Often it's just been too close to the ground. I haven't made an effort to get above things and see things further than my own perspective. So that's why we're doing things like today, to help us see a little bit further than we might otherwise have seen. So, Doug, as a segue, what has disappointed you as you have learned more about our history?
As you said earlier, Nathan, I like to believe that studying history helps us and helps society learn from its mistakes. But on July 20th, 1692, about 7 years after our church was founded, our minister Daniel Gookin dined with Judge Samuel Sewell. It was the night before Sewell was to preside over the marriage ceremony of Daniel Gookin to his wife-to-be, Rebecca Ting. Rebecca's father, by the way, was the first owner of the land on which I currently live. I wonder what Daniel Gookin and Samuel Sewell talked about at dinner that evening. Was it about the wedding plans the next day? Or could they have been talking about what happened the night before? You see, Judge Sewell at the time was serving on the court of Oyer and Terminer, which some of you may know was the court for the Salem witch trials. And on the night before Gookin and Sewell dined, 5 women who had been tried by Sewell's court were executed and hanged as witches. So how can this be? The man who worked so hard to protect and support Native Americans who had been unfairly persecuted in the war now dined with the very judge who enabled and empowered perhaps the worst miscarriage of justice in American history on the very next night after 5 women were executed. And this judge was to perform his marriage ceremony on the next day. History had indeed repeated itself. Our justice system and virtually all of the clergy at the time let us down. And apparently our first minister, who along with his father had done so much good for a group wrongfully oppressed by mass hysteria, was apparently willing to at least turn a blind eye to the execution of witches. That has disappointed me indeed. So Nathan, you already mentioned how some of what has disappointed you is how our history has too often been told from the side of the victor and the winners. Anything to add to that? And maybe last, what has made you feel proud?
So I mentioned before how women were not allowed to vote and that the minister would have to read the confessions, right? Okay. So my disappointment leads to this pride. How it is the stories of women of this church through the decades and decades and generations, some of whom are still here in the way that they provided the glue and the support, who have actually made this church possible. And I mean this literally. So how it was Sarah Cooney, who in the early 1900s founded the Unitarian Church in Natick, okay, right on 135. There's a building there that's now a bank, need a bank. She founded a church so that people could have a religion centered less on worshiping Jesus and more on following his teachings. Totally radical. That's why we have the Cooney Room, because Natick Church and us emerged in the 1970s. Cooney Room is named after her. I'm pointing over there because it's up there. How it was Betty Dowse Orchards in Sherburne, who died in her late 90s several years ago during the pandemic. We had her memorial service over Zoom, who had a hand, along with so many other people, in rallying to keep this church afloat. It was like about to collapse, you guys, in the 1960s when things were really dire, but said, we have got to have a Unitarian church in town. It can't only be Congregational Church. So she, along with others, formed the Good as New shop in the early 1960s, not because everybody needed to deal on stuff, though that's true, so that the money could be used to keep children's school alive and this place alive and afloat. So it just is amazing to me. These women couldn't vote. They had, like back in the day, they had their confessions read aloud by the minister, and they still couldn't vote. And then now, all along, it's the women who have saved us again and again and again. That's what I'm proud of. That's right, Susan. All right, Doug, you get the last word. Pride.
So I have to double down on your theme, Nathan. I too am so proud and inspired by the women of our church. Their contributions have been so large that there is an entire chapter in our church history devoted exclusively to them, and I recommend you read it. They raised money for our first organ, our first clock, and our first chandelier. As early as 1888, a woman served as our church moderator. Our women started religious education, managed our programming, and started our first Buildings and Grounds Committee. In the 1960s, as Nathan noted, when our church was on the verge of dissolving, they held it together with duct tape, raising enough money to continue church school in private homes. They would not let it die. And it is the women of this church who have had a profound impact on my own personal journey. Ellie Webster, at age 90, served on our finance committee when I was chair. She ran circles around Hank Rausch and I with her probing questions and attention to detail. Pat Manley was president when she recruited me to consider becoming the same. I thought she was crazy and told her I had a full-time job and could never match her level of dedication and commitment. She assured me that the church needed all kinds of leaders, including those who work full-time. She was right. I think of Sally Demler and Janet Barnett and Loretta Lee and Molly House and Katie Frasinelli and my wife Jen and so many more in this room with us and on Zoom. I think of the Women on the Land Acknowledgement Task Force with me, Kathy Healy, Kathleen Densmore, Deb Boyce, Gail Donaldson, Cheryl Peralt, and our fearless leader, Gage Heath. I seem to get the attention, but these women are such heroes in this work and doing so much to help us all learn and grow. So I'm deeply humbled and inspired by the heroic women who have carried us for 340 years and continue to do so.
Isn't Doug great? Doug, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I just want to remind us, we are stewards of this history, you and I. That's what we're caretakers of the history, right? And what I keep wondering about, sort of my charge for myself and for us as we sort of leave today is, somebody's going to be telling stories about us, right? And what kind of things we want them to say about the things that we did. That is quite a charge for us to hold on to. So we get to sing. It's an old hymn that I don't love, but I didn't love it because of the lyrics, but actually Sarah and Reverend Joe, our second minister, found new lyrics, and it's called Rank by Rank. Where it is, Rank by Rank. And this is a song that gets sung whenever the ministers process in and out of ordinations and installations. But with the new lyrics, it actually says a lot for us too. So I invite us to rise in body or spirit and join in singing Rank by Rank. And invite again to join us downstairs for fellowship and I think donuts, stewardship donuts. Again, it's way better than a pew tax, you guys. Way better. And if you'd like to join us for Roots class, we'll be gathering at about 15, 20 minutes in Channing Room. Let us say it again. And children's choir, Tim, meeting right here by the piano at 12. Let us say together our call to ministry. We go forth into the world in peace to act with works of love, to affirm each person's dignity and to cherish the living earth. Love to us.